What is up, YouTube? My name is Alex. Welcome back to the Lifting Nomad. And over the last little bit, I've been in Santiago, Chile. And in this video, I want to give my review of what it's like to go to Santiago as a digital nomad, as someone traveling, as someone visiting there who is not from Chile. I'm Canadian, so this is going to be my opinion on the city as a whole. So without further ado, let's get into the video. All right, welcome back to the Lifting Nomads. This is your first time seeing one of my videos over the last, I guess, 2.5 years. I've been to 25-ish countries, kind of all through South America, Latin America, Europe, North America. And I've gotten to get a good sense of what it's like to stay in cities for a longer period of time. Typically, I do slow travel of about a month or so in each city. But when I do one of these reviews of a city, I like to go into it with an open mind. I've never been to Santiago before, so this is my first time actually in the city. And I tend to try and experience as much as I can all at the same time, from pub crawls to hostels to cheaper restaurants to more expensive, fancier restaurants, really try and cover everything I can. But my review of a city has 5 specific criteria I like to cover in order to kind of standardize my approach so we're not biasing anything towards one factor or the other. So those 5 factors, as you'll see on the screen right now, are safety, accessibility, nightlife, health and fitness, and the cost. Now, why do I choose these 5 things? Well, I think for me, this is what's important. I think, this whole channel is about traveling, fitness, wellness, staying in shape while enjoying the beauty in life. So I think these 5 things allow it to be kind of an unbiased approach to experiencing a new city, whether that's going to Paris for the first time, or London for the first time, or Split, Croatia, or Mexico City, or Medellin. I really like to go into this with an open mind and experience things for the first time. So let's just get right into it. So where did I stay, first of all? I stayed at a hotel called the Mercure Santiago Central, which was really close to La Estaria neighborhood, kind of close to Castle Hidalgo or Castillo Hidalgo if you look it up on Google Maps. And this area is kind of like the most popular when you look at recommended areas. There's also like the Golf Barrio or Barrio del Golf, which has like the Ritz-Carlton, the W, some of the higher end hotels. But personally, I didn't really want to drop $500 or $600 a night on a hotel. I'm just not in that. I am just not in that tax bracket just yet. So for me, that's something that's just completely out of the picture. So let's talk about the first thing. Let's talk about number 1, safety. I wasn't really too sure what to expect going to Santiago. I've been to Peru, Colombia, obviously Mexico, Uruguay, Argentina, a lot of these like Latin American countries. So I think I have a little bit of a good baseline of what I consider safe and unsafe. I'm obviously someone who's pretty well traveled, so I do know to not wear too much bling, not be too loud in the streets, not draw attention to yourself, don't try and stand out as a foreigner. And I was, to be honest, a little bit nervous going there because I figured they would be a little bit more tan, almost like Peruvian looking, given that Chile and Peru are on the same side of same coast of South America. But it was actually a pretty diverse city in the sense of the way people looked. It kind of gave like a little bit of a mixed bag from Argentina to Peru to Colombia. Like there was a good mix of people. So to be honest, the way I dressed and the way I looked, I didn't really stand out. It's kind of hard to explain how, the feeling of being watched or like someone is paying too much attention to you as you're walking down the street. It's kind of hard to explain that unless you're there in the moment. But just when I was going around the streets, like I was in some pretty nice neighborhoods, of course, but I did explore the city quite a bit. I never really had that sense of, okay, maybe something bad is gonna happen. Someone's following me, someone's watching me, someone's looking at my phone on the table. Like I never really got that. And like I said, obviously I do keep my wits about me and I'm not like adventuring into the shittiest part of town at night by myself. But it felt really, really safe. And then after I got home, I started to do a little bit of digging on the ratings of Santiago. And apparently of the capital cities in Latin America, it's ranked number 2 in the safety wise after Buenos Aires in Argentina. And coming from BA to Chile, I didn't really feel that much of a difference in the safety. I would say, like, obviously keep in mind, do the obvious things. Take an Uber at night, don't dress like an asshole, don't leave your phone on the table. Obviously don't try and start fights or buy drugs or do anything like that, and you're usually going to end up okay. But overall, I thought it was a very, very safe and clean city. No city is without its imperfections of things like homelessness or just like less desirable neighborhoods, but I didn't really experience that too much from my time there. All right, let's get into accessibility. Now, for me, again, like as I rank these cities, I really talk about accessibility in the sense of walkable and getting around, everything from Ubers to transit to walking. Like I think those are really, really important things for me to stay healthy in a city. And from what we saw, everywhere we walked was kind of around the La Estaria neighborhood. And then if you go north of the river there, that's kind of like where the nightclub and discotecas are. And that's where we actually went to our pub crawl. We started in Providencia hostel, and then we walked up into the nightclub area there, which to actually confirm the name so I'm not confusing people, La Estaria, and then to the west of that you have like the Bella Artes, and then with the nightclub district where we were was like Bella Vista and Patronato. So those are kind of all in a very similar, if you look on a map, all kind of around each other, just like on the other side of this like main highway, the Costanera Norte, of that one of those main roads. Other than that, we kind of ventured around a little bit, but it's very walkable between that. And that area had everything that I would want from an accessibility standpoint. Good gyms, the biggest gym I've ever seen. I'm gonna talk about that in a bit when we talk about health and fitness. Very, very walkable, very clean streets. I didn't take the bus or the metro, but we did see a lot of metro stations. Might be worth looking into. Like I said, I was only there for the weekend, 5 days. So if I was there longer, I might have looked into the metro. But personally, even in a lot of the cities I stay in, I don't use the transit systems that often. I typically tend to pick neighborhoods where I can walk as much as humanly possible. And if it's too far that I need to walk, then I take an Uber just for the safety point of view. All right, let's talk about the nightlife. Of course, that's something that's important to me. Part of the reason I go to these places is to enjoy the food, the wine, the drinks, the nights out, like the fun. That is part of the reasons that I go to these places. Nightlife was really, really cool. Like I said, we did this Providencia hostel pub crawl that was really, really, really fun. I would 10 out of 10 recommend that if you are going to Santiago and you like pub crawls. We had a blast, and there was probably like, no joke, like 200 people in this pub crawl. Everyone, we all started at the hostel. There was a pre-drink, it was open bar, absolutely just get after it. Then we all walked together. They did a really good job of having like these, almost like the airplane signal signs, like the glowing poles. That's how they were flagging us down in the street to make sure everyone was staying together. And it was just a really good time. I think I paid like $20 each for our tickets, and it was a blast. We ended up going to a few different clubs in the Bella Vista neighborhood there, and then I ended up going to a different club with some of the locals that we had met at one of the hotel bars, and that was in Patronato, just to the west of that. In terms of like restaurants, we actually went to Borrago as well, which is number 29 in the world restaurant. Absolutely amazing. I think this takes number 2 best meal I've had in my life. Number 1 being Alma in Lisbon. If you ever get the chance to go there in Lisbon, Portugal, I don't even need to tell you. Just go to Alma, it'll change your life. But Borrago, very, very good. Great layout, great wines, really beautiful venue as well, and the service was absolutely incredible. Took the number 2 spot for best meal of my life, so if you do go to Santiago, check out Borrago. You're welcome. All right, health and fitness. So let's talk a little bit about that. Of course, that's part of the reason I travel to these places. If I'm evaluating going there for a long time, Santiago was no exception. Anyone who's been to Latin America, you know there's the Smart Fit gym chain, which is kind of like, it's comparable to Good Life or LA Fitness in Canada and the US, but but it's a little bit more chaotic consistently. Some of the ones in Colombia and Mexico especially, I had like some of the shittiest gym experiences I've ever had inside of these. Nothing against the chain, it's just, they sometimes have weird rules and like weird policies, and Colombia especially, they don't really give you much room, so they're super, super crowded. I've had people like bump into my barbells, and anyways, I've talked about that in other videos, but this SmartFit was by far the biggest I have ever seen, and there was no crowding at all. I was genuinely mind blown with how big this SmartFit was and how much room we had to work out in. There was like 4 squat racks, 4 benches, and I know obviously there's bigger gyms than that back home, but there's tons of room. Nobody was really in the gym when we were there, and we went at like a normal time of day. It wasn't like it was the middle of the night or something. In terms of like the health side of things, there was actually quite a lot of fresh like seafood based restaurants. Obviously being like a coastal-ish city, seafood was pretty accessible. And which coming from Argentina, where I've been the last little while in Buenos Aires, they don't really have a lot of seafood, and I've had to like go out of my way to find healthier food options. It was actually really nice and refreshing to go to Santiago and see a lot of seafood options there that made it pretty easy to stay healthy and stay eating well for the weekend. Now let's talk about cost. Obviously I talked about some of the more premium hotels that you could stay at. That's never where I tend to stay. The hotel that I booked, the Miracure in Centro, I believe I paid about 70 US a night, which was like a very clean hotel with a rooftop pool and rooftop bar in a good area, good security, cleaned every night, good service. Like, for that value, I think is pretty worth it. Typically, I don't stay in hotels, even at that price point. I still think it's just tough to justify it for a month. So I was looking at some of the Airbnbs in that neighborhood, pretty close to where our hotel was anyways. I could find a few for like $1,000 to $1,500 a month that were actually like really, really nice in good buildings as well. It was kind of interesting that they didn't have too many new build condos or apartments at all. I know like places like Mexico City or Medellin or even Buenos Aires, it's not super common, but they still have a few newer build apartments that you can rent. This was really not the case. A lot of these buildings were older that had been renovated with newer amenities and newer finishes. But overall, I think it was the cost-wise of the apartments, pretty cheap compared to a lot of other places. In terms of the other like regular everyday costs, the Ubers from the airport took us about, I want to say 25, 30 minutes to get from the airport, cost about $20 an Uber each way. Most meals were not that expensive. Obviously Barago, if you are going there, it's number 29 in the world. I believe we paid about 280 US each. That's with the wine pairing and food. Obviously you're not gonna do that every night if you're staying in a city, but for a one-time experience, it was worth it. On average, I think we were paying about $10 to $15 per meal in like a normal restaurant out in the city. Beers are pretty cheap. They didn't sell liquor or beers in the kioscos, which is really common in most of other Latin America. So you did have to go to a dedicated liquor store to get it. Just something to keep in mind if you are going to be visiting. But overall, I think the cost would have been on par with something like Lima or maybe Medellin, maybe a little bit cheaper. It wasn't anything out of the ordinary. I will say it was definitely cheaper than Mexico City for pretty much everything across the board. And given you can drink the water, given you can flush the toilet paper, the internet was good, the Ubers were cheaper and safer, there seems to not be as much corruption. It's kind of like, Santiago for me was pretty awesome in my mind. If I had to give this city like a true ranking of where I would go for it, I'm gonna go like 8.5 out of 10 for this city. Everything was great. I had an awesome time there. I was only there for 5 days, but it really opened my mind to, wow, maybe I need to go back and give Chile like a true like month or 2 month time. Like this was a beautiful, beautiful place. I had a great time and I can't wait to go back. So that pretty much is gonna be the video. Hopefully it was useful to hear my thoughts on Santiago. It was a blast. If this video was useful, feel free to leave a like or comment in the section below. Always helps the algorithm. Of course, check out some of my other videos for some of the other cities I've been to. But that is gonna be it for this one. Thank you very much for watching. Welcome back to Lifting Nomad. We'll see you in the next one. Peace.